I'm going to welcome my next guests, which are, hold on, Allison Fisher and Matt Hollowell. Matt, we've missed you. We haven't seen you for forever.
I'm here. I'm still here.
Yeah. I'm super proud of you. And Allison, nice to meet you. Have we met before? Did you get to come to the same event as Matt? Was that you? Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we saw you in Houston, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, that was awesome. I don't remember what we were doing that year, but I think it was the training on data literacy that we were doing.
It was.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, I'm going to turn off the screen sharing for now so we can just hear from you guys and your update, and you can screen share if you want to, but share away. We're super excited to know what's going on for you.
All right. I'm going to try to screen share. We'll see what happens here.
Yeah, there you go. It's working. Okay. I'm going to go off camera then.
Nice. So yeah, Allison and I are going to talk through two kind of related, but a slightly different topics. I'm going to talk from the district side. She's going to talk from the school side. I will say initially, LeiLani, just to set the stage, though LMS specialist is a title that I love to have, I'm very far from an LMS specialist. When I started 4 years ago at the central office here in Williamson County, we didn't even have an LMS. LMS specialist was kind of our budget way to get me in. We now have Schoology implemented throughout all of our schools, and a lot of that implementation and troubleshooting and stuff actually goes through a different piece of my department. I consider myself an SSO specialist and a help desk specialist and an app management specialist. So I'm going to talk a lot about that side. Essentially, the way our department runs right now, so we talked a little bit in LeiLani, you just used the word strategy and tactics, looking at objectives, strategies, tactics. I'm going to talk a lot about tactics today from specifically the central office sort of help side of things, because a lot of stuff is great in theory, the classroom stuff, the automation, the auto scheduling. I love every bit of this. But for us, our entire strategy through this COVID year and a half has really been maintain sanity, as you just said, LeiLani. That's been our primary goal. So I'm going to talk through, in terms of new leadership and how my department reacted to that, what that looks like on our side. So Allison and I batted around 100 ideas for what to title this presentation, and we came up with this as our title, which I have to say, I really have I kind of despise when people define words in presentations. It's just a little quirk that I have, but I'm going to do it because this is Learning Council and we break our own rules here, which I really enjoy. So according to the Merriam-Webster, this is the definition of re as a prefix. It is again, renew, back, and backward, which to me is exactly what school has felt like for the past couple of years. We just keep doing things again and we renew them. We go backwards, we go back, we come back. I think a lot of what we've done has been very circular in trying to actually raise our platform, not just go in a flat circle. But as everyone who's listening to this can attest to, it's been very, very difficult. These are our rewords that we have talked about in planning this presentation. And every single one of these will hit every one of you in a very specific way. Remaking, re-examining, rebuilding, reteaching, all of this stuff has been very important to us this past year and a half. And I highlight the word restart because Allison can talk about this later. She has restarted every year that I've known her, like from ground zero with her program. And I feel like that's what we've had to do, is really revisit the standards, rework our curriculum, remember who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. Like these are all the things that really matter to us, especially my piece of the department in instructional technology. So there's really three words that we focused on primarily this past year, and that is rethinking. And that really means rethinking everything from how do we teach these kids that are now remote, that used to be in a classroom? How do we rethink our one-to-one initiative, which was literally, let's do one grade level at one school and turned into all 40,000 students overnight. Rethinking the standards, how we teach them, and rebuilding. And rebuilding to me is really more of, it's rebuilding our structure, but it's also rebuilding our trust. My department has had to rebuild trust constantly. I mean, literally in the past 2 days, I'm rescoping and rebuilding an application, and people have lost their access and they don't know what's going on, and we have to fix it. There's a lot of trust that we have to rebuild with parents, especially in this district, but with our staff, with our teachers, with our students, with our central office, with our curriculum specialists. And so a lot of rebuilding we had to do in the past year and a half. And that's kind of led to this whole idea in my department of restructuring. So I'm going to show you what that looks like on paper. It was actually fun to do this presentation because I had not actually seen it in this sort of format before I started putting it together. And I'll tell you why we went through this and what it's sort of the outcome is as of today. So if you rewound 2 years from today, this is how you would have seen my department. You have Kelly Wade, who some of y'all know. She's our director. She's the K up top. I live on the operations side. So a lot of the SIS stuff, a lot of the LMS stuff, and a lot of the ClassLink stuff. When I meet parents, I'm like, that ClassLink dashboard your kids log into, I run all of that, like everything that's on the screen and everything behind the screen. And so it was me and 3 of my colleagues ran all of that stuff, primarily through email, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And that's how we kept the ship afloat for a couple of years in the beginning. You can see on the right side, we had very school-focused group of tech coaches. And these coaches, there were 8 of them. Primarily, their job was to cover our 50 schools. So you can do the math and see how effective that can actually be. And they would get called out to a school to like talk through some issues or how can we integrate tech into like with the building leads or the subject leads. And that was their job. And so again, we were very district focused. They were very school focused. I do want to pause for just a second before I go to the next slide and say this about LeiLani. 4 years ago, I think is when we first attended the Learning Council. And I sat, I think it was at Vanderbilt, and listened to LeiLani talk about these new job titles that were like digital designer and digital curator. And I was like, I don't know what she's talking about. Like we have tech coaches and we have our people over here. Fast forward 4 years, and we have now digital designers and an actual digital curator in our department. I think Allison has one as well. So I want to give 5 points to Gryffindor, to LeiLani, for showing me the way 4 years ago of what we would look like in the future. So there's your points for that. So I appreciate it.
LOL, Matt. That's really fun.
So I'm going to go back and forth real quick just so you can get the picture of this. Notice we've got 4 dots over here and 9 dots over there. Fast forward to the beginning of this school year, and the dots have very much shifted over to the operations side. You can see why that's happened. We have, having to deal with a year of students being at home, parents who've never seen their kids log in ever, were all of a sudden trying to get their kids onto a Zoom in the morning. So we very much shifted our resources to the operations side. Our tech coaches, which again are over here, this 8 group that you have on the right, have turned into digital designers this year. And so we have a group of them that Andy Davis works with. She kind of heads up that department, and they are not school focused anymore, but they're district focused. They do PD. They put out all sorts of resources for teachers to use across the district. And so you can see again, in looking at this structure, we have definitely changed our focus to be, instead of individual teacher at individual school, to be, we have to be able to deliver things district-wide. We've also changed the way that, well, actually, before I do that, I want to show you my operations side a little bit closer. So this 8 dot that you see on the left is a little misleading, because for the first time ever in our department, we actually have a hierarchy. We have enough people to where we have a front line, which is our tier 1 people, which answer a lot of our help tickets. We have our tier 2, which do a lot of work in our SIS and managing all sorts of forms and imports and exports of data. We have an apps manager, which handles a lot of ClassLink, and then the specialist where I am kind of oversees all of that. So again, 2 years ago, there was just a couple of us hanging out in the office. Now we have an entire structure, which has been very much necessary because of the change in our climate and just in our population. The other thing that we've definitely changed is how we help support all these people. In the past, the parents and students, which you see on the far left, they were to go to their teacher at all times. That was their very first line of contact. Go to your teacher. If you can't log in, go to your teacher if you don't have access to something. And the teacher would come to my department, or the principal or the admin or the front office staff, whatever it happens to be. And my department primarily would answer those via email. It was probably 90% email. Sometimes we get on the phone with people, and every once in a while we'd send a coach out to a school, which is what the whistle represents. but basically we were an email driven environment, which we knew was not sustainable, but it just was all we had at the moment. Again, you fast forward and you will see now that we have completely changed our structure. We have email, of course, which we're trying to get away from. We occasionally answer the phone, though I have to say we're not great at it. These 3 help desks you see in the middle, though, are our primary forms of communication. We now have a parent help desk, we have a teacher help desk, and we have a student help desk, which again, we never had in the past. And so now parents can reach out directly to us for support, students can reach out directly to us, and of course, teachers still can as well. We have discussion boards in Schoology. We have Zoom meetings all the time. I Zoom with teachers almost every day to try to troubleshoot things. And so you can see the difference in this very sort of limited way that we were offering support to now this kind of 360-degree, come at us however you need to, and we will try to implement whatever strategy we can to get you fixed up. And we actually are looking at piloting a new help desk system in the second semester of this year, which will actually include things like an AI bot, a chat bot, things that I know that we've seen in other presentations. Right now, we're very much still just in the text-based world, but we're looking at how can we be even more efficient? How can we cut those help desk ticket times down? And using AI is certainly something we're looking into. And we hope to pilot it in the second semester and then fully roll it out next year. So I'm very excited about that piece of it. So just a couple lessons learned. This lessons learned was like 12 deep, and I cut it to 6, and I cut it to 3 this morning. So I'm trying to get to the real big lessons that we have learned. But looking at the patterns in data analysis has been really important to us. So when everything was in email, you can't find a pattern anywhere. It's just drowning in email all the time. We now can look and say, hey, look at this help desk. We have 12 tickets on the same issue, and that's across the team. And so that kind of pattern recognition has really been important to us because we can stop the flow of email and the flow of help tickets by fixing the actual problem instead of all of us working on our own individual issues via email, which has been super nice. And analytics. So we have a DBA now on our team who is getting up to speed and using a data warehouse. And so we're going to be able to put out much more robust and much more interesting data, which is not something we would have done probably pre-COVID. It just wasn't on our list to focus on. But I think that we're going to be able to provide all sorts of learning and data for our students to our teachers going forwards, which is going to be really important for us, especially again at scale. We have students at home, students in school. We have kind of a hybrid of those things, and so that's really important to us. The second, everyone here already knows, so I'm not going to harp on it, but I like to talk about it all the time. Email's horrible, right? Like the second I'm engaging in one email with one person, I'm getting 12 emails in the back door, and that person thinks I'm listening to them, but I'm not, because I'm actually listening to this other person. And so again, looking at the help desk, looking at chatbots and AI and stuff is going to really be able to help us rebuild those relationships again with teachers where they'll get the attention that they need when they need it, because I think they're used to just sitting back and waiting, which is not a really good way for operations to run. And lastly, of course, again, people know this, manual work is not scalable. We spent years manually creating accounts, and we finally kind of are getting a little bit of our Jedi status at ClassLink in terms of how we're able to roster things and manipulate the data in the roster server and be more proactive. I want to say, I would like to do a presentation next year at the Learning Council called Pro instead of Re, because reactive is not where any of us want to live, but it's just where we are at the moment. I would love, our team has talked for 4 years. We want to be proactive. We want to get to that place. And a lot of the stuff that Chris talked about just a little while ago, a lot of stuff we heard yesterday is about being proactive. We're just not there yet, but we're really trying to get there. And so the less manual work that we can do, of course, the better off we're going to be. So that's kind of the big lessons that we've learned and what our restructuring has looked like in needing to be new leaders, right? Not relaxing and being in the old sort of way we did things. I think moving away and being in a post-tech coach world and really building up our support structure has very much helped us. So that's kind of my side of this. I'm going to show my beautifully transitioned slide over to Allison, and I'm going to let Allison talk about her experience with her online program and what that's looked like for the last couple of years.
So we started an online program for just our high schools in 2018, and we knew at that time we had to take a proactive approach. We really wanted to be upstream about it. So we absolutely had an agreement at our district that it would be a slow growth process, that we would really make sure we're working out the kinks before we move forward and grow it too big. My greatest concern was growing too big too fast would end ultimately in failure on the kids or for the kids. So we started with 255 students and 496 seats. It was as small as we could have it, but really say we had enough to have a sampling that was worthy of saying, is this working or not for kids? And the next year, we just took the cap off. We really didn't grow by that many courses. We went from 13 courses that we had offered that first year to 18 courses that second year. So it wasn't huge growth, but the number of students grew, and the number of students who were giving us feedback that it really helped them when they got to college and were able to take an online course, but having seen an LMS before, those type things, because we hadn't offered that in our high schools yet. So we were slow growing in the right direction, feeling great about things. And then the pandemic hit. And so we shut down schools in March. Everybody said, hey, how are we going to make this work to do some online resources for our kids? Matt and Allison, can you go help put a plan together? So we tried to build that really quickly. In July, we found out we're also going to be offering a fully online option for everybody pre-K through 12 in the district. And so they just expanded my program to cover pre-K through 12, and we had 7,200 students that year. But we also already had 2,100 hybrid students in the high school level who were going to take our courses with us. So that left us with both options. And we ended up moving 681 teachers. 300 of those, about 300 of those were fully online, and the rest of those were supplemented. We might not have enough health science where we needed a full-time health science teacher, but that teacher would teach at their building and teach for us. Now, you can see where this is leading. We now ended up with teachers who were teaching remotely in person with kids that were quarantined and teaching online, doing all the things and trying to learn an LMS in the same year. So last year was difficult is an understatement for our teachers and our students, but with the instructional technology restructuring the way that they have and realizing, hey, we're going to have to be able to stop one-offing this and being able to serve these kids, we started seeing that progression really help us in a more proactive sense. This year, the state had come out with some new guidelines in April where we ended up changing it. We actually became 2 schools. So the team lead that I had last year leading our K-5 program is actually the principal for the K-8 school now. And I am the principal for the high school that we've opened. So I can only talk specifically about those high school numbers, but we have 252 students that are fully enrolled with us and 3,200 hybrid students that are still attending their high schools and enrolled with them. 78 part-time teachers that are building teachers for the most part, but either teach 1 or 2 sections with me, and then 18 full-time. And that structure has really, really looked different for us. On that next slide, we'll talk a little bit more in specific about that. The staffing increase has helped us tremendously, but we've added those unique positions that Matt just talked about. We have a digital curator. We have an instructional coach who focuses in online teaching and not just best practices in the classroom, but also understands the LMS, has taught online for a couple years for us, and really has been able to use purchase products and our own written courses to be able to help support that. The new structure at central office also supports all the schools and all the students. And it really is teaching our students to not just go to their teacher and put that extra weight there. I think we all know our teachers have more than enough weight on them at this point. So we're really trying to make sure that they're getting to teach the content and teach their material while we take that extra load off of them. And by we, I really mean Matt's team, not me at all, but the district is trying to take that load off of teachers. The course writing process is continual for us. We write our courses, well, in the past, we've written our courses a year in advance and then have the year to implement them. This year, our struggle is with expanding so quickly that we are actually having teachers write courses while they're teaching them, which I would say that nobody would think is a very good plan. It's not. Our teachers do that, will tell you that as well. they are killing it with the process. They are coming at it with, it's got to be good. We can't just treat these kids like guinea pigs. So they are really working hard, but we also realize that payoff is the burnout. And that payoff is also, if it doesn't work, having to do extra work to then go back, make it work while you're still building for the future and trying to teach at the same time. One of the things that's really helped us in online is that we implemented this year that each of our students, now that they're really our students, has a homeroom with a full-time teacher. We uniquely have certain grade levels, certain combinations of a schedule that can allow a student to never have a full-time teacher for WCS Online, which is fine, other than it just doesn't give that same piece, that same relationship, that same structure and support to the student. So we're really trying to build that in. But again, another lift for our full-time teachers. And then our PD has changed dramatically from any building school that I've been at in Williamson County or other counties for that matter. We've really taken a different approach where the other side of the instructional technology team, the part where the digital designers are and that Andy runs, they really work with us and our curriculum specialist to make sure that our teachers get what they need. They write that in a format that can be virtual, that can be asynchronous. We do have some in-person sessions, but we really try to make sure we're modeling what we're teaching, letting the teachers experience that from their end. So we work very closely with our teaching learning and assessment department and our instructional technology department so that we're sharing those same practices that we're trying to implement in hybrid and blended learning in our online school so that it's not something different, it's just taken to a different level. In doing this, we've learned several lessons. That first is the reconfigure. We figured out that offering this to our students was really helpful in helping with students who have transferred to us or not been successful in a class before, maybe they're credit deficient. One thing that WCS sees a lot of is students who really want to take extra classes, have more AP class opportunities or classes of choice opportunities. And so being online or having that hybrid option really lets them do that. They could take their full load of 7 classes that they're building and take up to 2 online with us. If they're online with us, they can take up to 9 fully online. So we really try to give the students some flexibility there that we've never been able to offer. And it also provides a flexible environment that we haven't been able to offer anywhere else. Williamson County is a very college-driven, post-secondary options-driven sect of Tennessee, and our students and parents really are looking for options of how to make themselves stand out in a county where a lot of students stand out amongst others in Tennessee, but maybe not within our county. We have very high performing students. So we really wanted to make sure that we had this option of if you want to take an extra culinary arts, but it really isn't needed in your day because you have to have this, or you're also trying to take 3 years of world language, we want them to have that ability to have that shining spot in their schedule. And we've realized that we can offer that through some of our online combinations as well. The rejuvenation is what's really exciting for our teachers. They're welcoming the challenge. However, they're finding the challenge with it. They are really excited about this new opportunity of a new way to deliver to students, but they're also having to learn so quickly and move so quickly that we realize we don't want to kill the rejuvenation and turn it into burnout. Students are very grateful for the opportunities and to keep that WCS diploma. So we've had a lot of students who have wanted to go online before. You have to withdraw, go to a homeschool, go somewhere else that's offering it. But in Williamson County, it's important to a lot of our families that they have a Williamson County Schools diploma. And so this offers them that opportunity. On the not so positive side, maybe we've got the reteaching and the regression that we've seen. So we've realized in the last year, parents and students are coming to WCS Online with their own understanding of what online classes are, often hearing from friends, it was easier, it's faster, and they're expecting that same thing. But we are really trying hard to have the same rigor in our classes. But we also realize that the students having to adjust to a different platform and a different amount and structure for feedback, which they're not used to. And that adjustment period can sometimes cause a little bit of a struggle. We often find that students are so used to what traditional teaching looks like and the structure of that they're waiting to be told what to do next. And when you go in order of the course, and it might not be intuitive in the sense of giving feedback, and if you didn't do well here, let me go ahead and direct you here, because our courses aren't necessarily written that way. They still need the teacher to facilitate those pieces manually. It can be a little bit of a struggle for the students to figure out when the teacher's not there to say, do this next, what do I do? And then we have found that our stronger classroom teachers, when they come to us online, they've gotten their art of teaching down to such a science that they're struggling with feeling inadequate. And we definitely want to make sure that they're supported, that we realize this makes you feel like a new teacher again. And I don't know that any of us would want to go back and redo years 1 and 2 unless we could do it with the experience we now have. And so some of our teachers are feeling that, but putting the same pressure on themselves to perform at the same level they did in the classroom in a totally foreign environment. And then that leads to the regression. We also have part-time staffing issues because those teachers are having to teach traditionally, remotely, in a blended environment and online. They're taking some of our online classes as in addition to their full load at their school for a supplement. It really makes them struggle with dealing with what isn't directly in front of them at that time. It really is hard to be proactive and upstream when your goal is maybe to just not drop one of the balls you're juggling. So they're trying to find that piece, and we're trying to alleviate with staffing as much as we can. The enrollment numbers do limit that a little bit. And so I can see us growing gradually in the future and being able to subside or to take care of some of those issues. I think the issue might be that if it takes too long, the teacher burnout would be the bigger concern. Students also, just since 2020, when we shut down schools for a couple months, we went to remote, traditional, online, learning from home, trying to figure out how to make it all work. If they're missing that strong foundation of a concept, like especially in a high school math, it's really hard for them to move forward without that individualized help to figure out where the gap is. And when a teacher is trying to do that in an asynchronous environment, it can be really challenging. And I think asynchronous can be misleading too. The number of times that we've had to say, asynchronous doesn't mean it's without a teacher. It doesn't mean that there's no instruction. But it does take some discipline on the student side, and it does take a little bit of an extra step on the teacher side to see all of those learning objects come together in a fluid movement and just in a fluid manner for the kids. But again, we're still at the manual piece for that. And so we realize we need to take care of that piece. So in order to really see this big picture, I just kind of wrapped it up with a refocus at the end, where our refocus for success is building those relationships. We know one of our biggest struggles is building those connections, teacher to teacher, teacher to student, student to teacher, student to student, because we are in an asynchronous and virtual environment. And then some students, teachers, whatever that may be, are allowed to hide online, and we're making sure that, or we're trying to make sure that we're pulling that student out, that person out, and making sure that they're not remaining isolated, that they're still having those real world connections, and that person that they feel like, hey, this person does care, so I want to do this, and not just let me click on this object and let me do this activity, but actually get a classroom and high school experience out of it. That second one, results, is really, really important to me, because I think that's what the kids are in it for, whether they realize that or not initially. But they want to make sure that they're mastering the actual content and receiving the remediation when they need it, receiving enrichment when they need it. Again, with that not being an automated process for us, that's a heavy lift while our teachers are currently writing the courses and then realizing, hey, here's probably what else needed to be written in there. So that process, again, of being proactive is tough. And I don't feel comfortable with always saying, don't worry, we'll get it next year, because these are students that we're talking about and teachers that we're talking about today, and not next year. And then that retention, keeping the students, keeping the teachers, making sure that they're supported in a way that feels comfortable to them, despite the limitations in our environment. One of the things that we focus on greatly and will continue to do is helping teachers and students learn to step away from school work when they work or do school from home. And if they're always at home, learning to walk away, turn it off, take that break that's so important, to take the time for the social emotional learning. but kids have to show up to do that. That sometimes does need to be synchronous, and finding that balance. And then also making sure that we're not increasing burnout when we really have all of the structure in place to be able to support them, but trying to make it work in a way that actually supports the schedule they're on and doesn't add one more thing to their plate. So we do see success on the rise. It's just, I think when we get there and as we get there, and our struggle is making sure that they're supported and happy and fulfilled along the way.
Well, this is really super awesome. What you guys have done and put together. I have a myriad questions. I want to make sure that if there's attendees, we know where they're from, if they want to pipe up and talk about kind of where they're at. They're obviously attending because they're curious about what other schools and districts are doing. But let me start with one thing first. What do you feel is the trend or the percentage of moving to online, like wanting to not come into the building?
I think it's huge. So where we find that to be somewhat unique for us is that our students really want this flexibility, but a lot of them want to graduate from their high school building and not necessarily have to fully enroll in an online school or get a different diploma or have a different graduation prom experience, whatever those milestones are in high school. I think if we took that piece away, you noticed from last year when they actually got to graduate with their school, stay enrolled with their school, we had 7,200 students in our online schools. Mm-hmm. This year, we went down to a total with the middle and the high school. We're at something like 650, but it made them have to switch schools. It made them have to actually say, nope, this is going to be my school now. I'm going to be in this online environment. And that's been a struggle for our kids. But I think alone in high school, just seeing that we have 3,600 kids that are taking a hybrid class or more, I think the need is there. I think trying to make it all work and trying to find the right balance, because we're also trying to fit the structure of online into a bell schedule and into a building structure that it doesn't work with. And so trying to find that balance at the same time has been really difficult.
Yeah. So let's talk about then, because you just expressed that what we're hearing everywhere in the nation. There's a stressor point where, yes, people want to be online, but what they're really saying is they want flexibility that does still intersect with some humanity.
Yes.
Okay. And they want it to be incredibly self-paced.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. Anytime, anywhere, blah, blah, blah. I'm at my own level, right?
Yes.
And you can help me play catch up by doubling me up or anything else that you want to do. But really, that's a new structure that schools aren't used to trying to employ, right?
Correct. And our teachers don't work 24/7. And so we're employing teachers and telling them that their hours are still building hours, and our kids might not get online until 8 p.m.
Yeah. So you're dealing with exactly what we're hearing everywhere else. Okay. So I'm waiting for Doug to let me know if we're going to have Rochelle join early so we can go right into the panel, but I haven't heard yet. So I think what I want to do with you guys, you and Matt, is have like a mini panel with you right now.
Sure.
And just go into this conversation that we would otherwise have had at the end of the panel. And then if Rochelle, if she joins again later, I'm just going to have it individually with her. Just put her through the paces, same set of questions kind of a thing. Yeah, because everywhere we go, even when we were on the road physically in Atlanta, Dallas, and then Indianapolis, it's palpable. The emergency moment is not over. Like the Indiana superintendent was talking about the fact that she has 84 bus drivers and needs 110. So she pulled from food service and other administrative staff to fill the gap. If one person gets sick, they can't run buses that day because of equity issues. Like they can't just get some kids to school. That is really rough. and a teacher shortage at the same time. So just watching her and the fact that she smiled at all during the day that we had her there, I was shocked because I just wanted to hug her. You know, it's like, wow, how hard can it be? So we really are dealing with a mutation where we don't want to leave behind that teacher humanity and sometimes physical presence. But most of the nation, and even California passed AB1, has tried to go to the 2-rail model, which is what you're kind of doing, right? You're either this kid, you're an online kid, or you're this kid and you're physically in the building. You can't mix them. Or you can sort of mix them, but that's not an entirety, right?
Correct.
So we literally are in that moment very severely of what are we going to be? Because we can't keep driving ourselves crazy trying to be two things with a melting in the middle, and no one's satisfied. Because that's really the state of America. So I want to put on screen a discussion about the model. Let me see, where's my screen sharing? Share screen. So the year after you guys were with us in Houston, we played this game where we had people playing the role of teachers, students, and they're all given sort of pace through, right? Like your step one, you're studying. And then somebody would do a shout, turn, right? And everybody would go to the next item on their list of their game sheets. And you would see a couple students leave the big homeroom and go out to their classroom, right? And the teacher would zoom out from their office and meet them there. Other teachers were roaming the main homeroom, House Gryffindor, right? There could be House Slytherin on the same campus or whatever. But everyone's self-pacing. And they're triggered by auto-cohorting out to the individual intersection with the human teacher. Now, if you're off campus that day, for whatever reason, you're given a Zoom set, right? Like you're going to attend via Zoom because you're in the cohort, right? I don't think we did this game with you guys when you were in Houston, right? Only when we were in Dallas the next year. Yeah.
So
We were in Dallas as well.
we were in Dallas as well. Yeah.
Oh, you guys got to play the game on big giant
Yeah.
physical board? Yeah, that was awesome. We tried to drag that around to several states afterwards. It was a lot of work getting it on the airport.
It was loud and fun. I liked it.
Yeah, it was super fun. So this thing now is becoming real through the hybrid logistics project by the Learning Council because no one else would do it. All the companies in the field love them all, right? We love them. They got great technology, most of them. They want education to remain its same structure forever because that's who they sell to. They don't want to see you mutate. But the truth is, school districts all over the country are losing kids to homeschooling, to alternatives, to anybody who'll do it the way they want to have it done. Small schools can do that fully contemporary pacing structure. Bigger schools, the scalability of it demands some sort of infrastructure that will automate those pieces together. LMSs don't want to do this. So this space rework of hybrid logistics isn't necessarily something you have to go whole hog into, but it definitely, Allison and Matt, would be something you'd hold on to the human part, but refine it into its very specific thing. Like, do you need to lecture for an hour? Or what you did in real class was you lectured for 20 minutes and the rest of the time they did work, right? Like, so let's get specific. So this is going to be another overhaul of the execution of curriculum, because you're going to start looking at the extreme of what's needed from the humans. What is teaching? And is it all one to many? Or are you going to really put one to many into really small pots of time to allow more one-to-one? That's really the hypothesis of this model shift. So talk to me about sort of where you're at now in this thinking, like, because you just showed how much your model has already shifted, right? And Matt, you showed that it came true what we were predicting. And it's going to get more in terms of who's doing what. So you're seeing actually growth in jobs. Because what terrorized people about model shift originally was, we don't all want to be online teachers and never see the kids, and you're going to fire half of us and we're terrified, right? Like, stop talking, right? But what you're actually seeing is something else. So talk to me about kind of your thoughts, each of you, on this. Matt, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I find this whole conversation fascinating because Allison and I and a group of us from Williamson County went to Naperville. I don't know, what was it, 3.5 years ago, maybe, Allison, something like that?
Yeah.
And up near Chicago. And looking at the way that they were structured their schools, they had days where some of their kids didn't come to school. They had periods where some of their kids did not come to the classroom because depending on where they were and what they were learning, they needed sort of more one-on-one time, right? Back then, I couldn't even imagine a kid not going to school. I was like, that blows my mind. Like, because I had I guess a sixth grader at the time, probably, or a fifth grader. And I was like, she'll go to high school and not go to school. This sounds amazing. I have some free time or just alone time to like get her own studies done. And then we get into the pandemic and then no kid goes to school. And I was like, this is insane. So we've kind of, the pendulum that always swings is very interesting to me that all of a sudden my kids went fully online last year. And just for full disclosure, my students don't even go to Williamson County schools anymore. We moved them to a private school because it was smaller and because it was somewhere we knew they could go in person and have more individualized attention. And a lot of that came from the year that they spent online, which was, it was good for us as a family unit, but difficult, of course, for the teacher and students and all that kind of stuff. The nice thing is their help desk was me, and I literally worked in the next room, and so it worked out pretty well for them. But sort of looking back at the pendulum and refocusing on this idea of the school space and how this works, I think, LeiLani, when you talk about the technology space, that's where my head is at. That is where I do a lot of my time. And one of the things that we learned last year, we had students who were online from different schools in the same class. So in other words, we had 3 kids from one elementary school and 6 kids from another elementary school, all combined into one online class. Well, that sounds great until you have site-based purchases. And so all of a sudden we had school A bought Learning A to Z and school B didn't. Well, this half the class had access to the program, this half the class did not. Wow. And that bit us big time. I mean, Allison was there. I think we were having the meeting in my department where we went, no one saw this coming. Like, this is a really, really big deal. We spent the better part of the year just shifting licenses around and trying to explain to our tech partners, like, you have got to be more flexible. Like, this is not going to work, the rigidity of which you worked before. And I think, LeiLani, that speaks to your conversation of the friction of the old model. I mean, and friction is my best word for it. Yeah. It is even in our SIS, and Allison can speak to this because she's our scheduler, trying to schedule these online classes into a SIS, which doesn't allow you to schedule online classes, like, it has taken an awful lot of creativity and data manipulation to get done. To me, and forever and always looking at this graphic, this was the ideal for my own students, is the ideal for our district, being able to really personalize and knowing our teachers the way I know them. This is what they want as well. Like, they want to teach. They don't want to put the kids on all the technology. They don't want to not know what they're doing. They want to know where the knowledge gaps are intimately, not just because a report spit it out for them. But we have, as everyone has, overworked, overstressed, completely checked out sometimes teachers that we're trying to build that trust back with. And so I love the model and I hope we go towards this. I just know it's breaking the mold. It really is. And thankfully, we've done nothing but break the mold in the past 2 years. We've had to break every single rule that we have to get these kids educated. And Allison is, again, a big part of that. And so, Allison, I'll pass the question to you about where we're at. But I think it's a wonderful thing to look forward to and saying, we're going to have so much of this automation that is not technology. It really is just automation, which is not the same thing.
Yeah, it's logistics automation.
It's logistics. Exactly right. I'm all for logistics. And so, Allison, I'll let you speak to that stuff.
Well, I think
and Allison, before you go, I think for you, what I want to hear is the potentiality from your mind within the online side, right? Like, because this would be, if the online side said, we're going to be mixologists and mix in some physical, that might be the way to think about it. So go ahead.
And I think it goes back to what Matt started with, that Naperville visit for us. There were probably 20 of us from our district that went to Naperville that year, all looking at it from a different perspective and a different vantage point, really, of, but when I look at this as an online school, when I look at this as how they roster apps, those type things. So we were each there for a different purpose. But the one thing that I think all of us came away with a resounding understanding of is not many people have built online before they built blended. And so when we started with online and other people had never even seen our LMS, we actually didn't own an LMS when we started online. We ended up buying it our second semester of having an online program. It was really interesting because we are still at the point of trying to teach and differentiate the pieces of that's a learning object, that is a resource. That does not make an online course. That now we've got a repository of learning objects. And so we've got teachers trying to understand the difference between a course that flows and actually makes a course versus you can't just put a worksheet online and call it a digital classroom. You literally need to make it do something and have a purpose online. So we often have that conversation of what would you do if you were in person? Okay, now what does that look like when you're online? And I think what our teachers are hungry for is exactly this model. And the kids who are really amazing in online and really already have that structure and literally just needed the opportunity to be able to go online are already successful. The kids who are saying, wait, what happened to the instruction? What happened to somebody telling me what I need to do next would flourish in that environment. I think the biggest obstacle for us is the space, like literally the physical space to make that happen in, and getting out of the mindset of the structure of, but it has to work inside of our SIS for scheduling purposes. And it has to work in this manner to make that happen. And having flex hours for an employee is really scary to HR. Saying that we're going to have some teachers that only work in the evenings. Teaching is teaching, hours are hours. I don't know that it matters to me, but it absolutely does when you come into a structure that was already defined. So having only one thing, so we'd have two schools, I guess, that would break the mold of the other 50 in our county, and realizing that we're really asking for a whole different set of rules. But if you let us use those different set of rules, I think it will work for you. And getting the buy-in for that, I think will take a lot of conversations, just like it is with, hey, if you were going to do this in the classroom, what would it look like? Now let's talk about what the opportunities are online. Matt brought up that we were having to teach teachers of, if you use this app as a site-based purchase, you can't have it there. Well, when the teacher says the only thing I've ever known is learning A to Z, and we say, but both schools have this one, can you learn this one? Now it became about the tool instead of about the teaching. And I think if we can say, let's talk about it from the teaching perspective and we'll give you the right tools, I think we could get there. I think it is just a longer journey than we have time for, because people are wanting this in the immediate, with immediacy, and we're not there yet. It grew too fast and it wasn't scalable at the rate that we scaled it.
Yeah. So when you think about when we started thinking about the model the EduJedi started thinking about the model, they were thinking and looking at, let me just go to this one. This, I don't know how well you can see that, but see how there's a traditional model with simultaneous. For you, Allison, it'd be like they're all online for those things.
Yeah.
But then there's a breakaway, maybe an hour or two every day, that goes into a new model. And those would be science, because you want kids to have physical labs. They're online kids, but they got to come to school on Thursdays for an hour, right? Or whatever. Or for whatever reason, they should be on campus for that moment. Or maybe it's just one day a week. And you auto cohort that moment, that is the physical moment, into that window only. So the calendaring algorithms are way more sophisticated than like Calendly, because Calendly will just take your whole day. You work from 8 to 5 in Central Standard Time, right? I just will book you give somebody your Calendly link and they can book any of your time. That's not going to work. So the algorithms being built to allocate chunks into that physical intervention are very sophisticated. But essentially, what we're seeing is online schools start to think about the model shift from, I'm an online school, and but sometimes I want to have hands-on stuff happen. So how do I do that? Well, schedule starts with a carve out that would do this, but then the learning pathways have to be built to tag those intersections. So you accumulate into that intersection moment, and it tells you you're the first one of 10. you need to go study something else because you got to wait until Friday for the physical day and you got to come to school that day. So that's what I'm talking about is we know the giant battleship behemoths like you guys and most other districts, you can't spin on a dime. You're going to have to mutate slowly. So anyway, the EduJedi, I've had many conversations about this. I've got gray hair over this conversation. So I'm coming back to you, Matt, more comments on that particular point of the mutation.
Yeah, and I'll say as well, just to go back to Allison's point, not to blow up her spot, but her last, and I think perhaps most successful staff meeting to date was done in person, because it was just better, right? And I was lucky I got to swing by at the end and just see some smiling faces where they were. But I think, LeiLani, when you talk about that, maybe we're online as a virtual staff meeting, but every once in a while we get together and play games. Like that is a really great way to look at it, as opposed to we have a staff meeting in the library every week. Oh, 1 week we have a Zoom. Like that's the complete opposite. It does not feel the same. Yeah. I think that mutation, and again, I think that, I look at it from a technology point of view. I mean, we're still fighting with major ed tech players who can't even handle more than one teacher in a classroom in their system. And we're like, you are way, way behind if that's where you're at. Like what we need as a district to be able to, again, break the mold and really deliver that on-time learning or on-time tech or on-time access, really, for everyone who needs it at the drop of a dime is, we have a couple, I won't blow up anyone's spot. We have a couple of vendors who still sync our data once a week, which means somebody's getting paid to literally push the button once a week to sync our data. And I'm like, y'all, and Kelly Wade is not here because she's actually at a different conference. But I mean, Kelly Wade, she does not handle that kind of stuff very well. Yeah. Because we're trying to get so far ahead of the curve, and we're trying to be proactive. I like the online stuff. Again, that the model to me makes sense because I have a 9th grader and a 6th grader. And to me, the best thing that can happen for them is the idea that they're getting the learning they need at all times, and they're getting the breaks that they need at all times. And it's not, oh, you belong to this grade level, this age level, and this color group, therefore this is the schedule you have to maintain all the time. If my students are anything like most students these days, they don't live in that world. Like they don't have appointment TV, right? They don't live in the same world that we grew up in. And looking at how we're going to mutate, when I literally look at our technology and go, well, here's a box, here's a box, here's a box. They all need to be triangles and they all need to somehow interact. We have a long way to go, I think, with that. And a lot of that, frankly, and again, because Kelly Wade leads our ship, frankly, a lot of that is us teaching the vendors what they need to do, which is utterly frustrating because we have other things to do. But it is trying to explain to all of these different technology companies, I know you've just made money for years and years and years and didn't have to grow, but you're losing us. Like, we had to spin on a dime, you have to as well. And we're really getting some resistance to that. But we have really smart people working on the problem. So
well, I'm glad you mentioned it because we can do editorial on it and kick some butts, so to speak, nationally, because we have like 10,000 in readership just on the vendor community side. We increased by 95,000 in readership on the administration side in K-12 since the start of the pandemic. So, 75% of our readers are all administrative, Frank. They're not teachers. So it's a little bit of a different thing.